Welcome to what I call the Omnicast. This is Daniel Crawford, and, well, I've been the host of podcasts off and on for almost my entire life. Let's take a little, history lesson here of my experience with this. Back when I was 11 years old, my best friend, Jeff Murray, and I, we started... we got these audio cassettes, and this is all the way back in 1996. And my stepdad, he had this little audio recorder. And my best friend and I, he's staying over one night, and he's looking at that thing, and he's like, maybe we should record on that. So, we just trying to have fun. We started recording on this thing and just being stupid. My best friend, he was a big fan of like Wayne's World and the Jerky Boys and stuff, and a lot of his jokes came from like those movies, inspired by those movies and many others, but predominantly Wayne's World and Jerky Boys. And we called these things, we called them our editions, but they were specifically WB Balls and WB Buns. Like my best friend had WB Balls and I had WB Buns. And that we had, and he was the A side, I was the B side of the cassettes. And we did, over the span, I'd say from 1996 and off and on through 2004, we did about, I think it was like 15, 16 editions. So I still have all of them. And one of these days, I'm going to copy them onto digital. I'm going to make them digitized, and I'm going to share at least snippets of them with you all. Actually, I have a not dubbed over, but I have a cassette where I put the greatest hits from all of our editions on there, and it's specifically from our childhood. Some stuff, just some legendary stuff that made us laugh and made our close friends laugh, and it would be a lot of fun just going back and listening to that. I haven't listened to them in a long time. It's been at least 10 years since the last time I heard any of the audio from any of these editions. But yeah, there's hours upon hours of not so much footage, but you know what I mean, like audio clips. So anyways, getting into that, what is the Omnicast all about? You see, in referencing my history with recording podcasts, they didn't call them podcasts back in the 90s, but with my history of recording these kind of things and talking to a radio, I started a few years ago a podcast with my brother Michael, and this was after we had taken a trip to Indiana to go visit our second family up there, more like my best friend and his family, and we heard a little podcast that Jeff had recorded with one of his brothers, TJ, and it's the Jeff and Taylor podcast. Oh my God, what was it called? It's the Jeff and Taylor Show podcast show, something like that. It's hilarious. It was hilarious. Unfortunately, I don't have any of those audio clips, and I would just love to have some of those, because I would definitely share some of that in here, because it's all that stuff is just gold. What Jeff and his brother were able to do was just pure gold, and that, in listening to that, it just made me think, like, man, that'd be really fun to do, And one time during that same trip up to Indiana, we were up there for a week, my brother Michael was not able to come up with me. So Michael was house sitting for me, and I called him just to see how things were going, and he's like drunk in my house, and we're just going back and forth. My best friend's like, man, I'd love to listen to a podcast with you guys, because you guys have like excellent banter. And I thought, you know what, that'd be a great idea. So I talked with Michael, and then he and I created a podcast called The Appropriate Indecency. So, we had like about 4 or 5 episodes of Appropriate Indecency before things started to happen to where Michael wasn't able to come over and record anymore with me, at least not consistently. And for about like a year and a half, Michael like didn't record at all. So I was like kind of sneaking in interviews with him and stuff. And, this, that was all well and good, but about like, I'd say almost a year after I had started this podcast with Michael, Jeff had come down to visit to come watch a wrestling pay-per-view with me. And when he was coming down, he noted, like, I had this idea for a wrestling podcast that you and I can record together. And, he mentioned our old editions that we used to make. And I was like, yeah, I'd love that. And we called that podcast. I mean, we bounced some ideas off of each other. What we could call it. We wanted to have like some kind of wrestling theme and have like gimmicks and stuff. And we came to the conclusion of calling it, instead of like a Falls Count Anywhere match, we called it Fans Count Anywhere. And it was a lot of fun. We recorded like maybe a dozen episodes of this. Like the first two the first episode for sure was in person. And then we recorded more over the phone. Unfortunately, Jeff, we lost all the audio for all of these shows. It's forever lost to time, which just makes me sad because a lot of them were so funny. We recorded that throughout 2019 up until like maybe February or March of 2020. And no, it was up until January of 2020. Excuse me. And the sad thing is, like, he had something happen with his Spreaker account, and it just erased all of the audio for the show. And it's like, basically, I had a character in there named DC3, which was a heel character, and he went by the character name JS, which of course is like an acronym for like his first and middle name. So he and I, we had a lot of fun with this. We analyzed wrestling of the day, and we also talked about why we loved wrestling. I came at it from a heel perspective, but we had a lot of fun with that. When that came to an end, we created a new podcast, without the gimmicks, that just called Wrestling Today. This one I saved all the episodes for, so I still have every single episode of Wrestling Today. But when we had a more unreliable schedule around this time because our work schedules did not cooperate with us, I created like a side podcast to go along, like in addition to it, called Extra Extra. So like extra real about it. So I wanted to kind of keep up with the wrestling news theme, and our whole point with this whole podcast, we weren't going to crap all over anything in wrestling. We were trying to be all positive. So I created Extra Extra so I can just like give my takes more consistently on wrestling without having to wait for Jeff, to be able to be ready. And it was still a lot of fun. I still was able to do these episodes. Unfortunately, Jeff was not able to do the podcast anymore. So it became just me. So now that I'm up to date on that, I did the extra episodes off and on for, from 2020 up until the middle of last year, 2021. And then, I kind of ran into like, a wall, if you will. Like I wasn't able to do it as much as I wanted to anymore. So then I stopped. I always planned on coming back. So let's rewind a little bit. That was the wrestling aspect of all this. With the appropriate indecency, Michael and I, we wanted to also talk about like things that we loved. We wanted to analyze things, not just be funny, but also, nerd out about things, about wrestling, about music, movies, shows, what have you. And that was all awesome too. Those ideas. We didn't really get too much into those. We did record some stuff for it, but all of that stuff you will hear in the earlier episodes of Appropriate Indecency. But also, let's go back all the way to 2014. In 2014, I had launched a sort of a YouTube show that I called the Inequality Chronicles. This was me looking to, assess politics, assess the current events. And what I would do with this is I would take my camera and I'd record myself talking about news of the day, and sort of analyzing it from the perspective of someone in the working class. And, sort of connecting the dots with how that affected the working class. And I had a lot of fun with this. The only problem was it was very time consuming. Because basically I would take a news article, I'd piece it apart, take a number of bullet points from it, and then I'd talk about it. And then I'd also analyze it from my perspective. But in the editing part, this would take a while. I would edit the video to show like the news clip, and then sort of fade back to myself. Like they came out okay. But then, of course, my DVD recorder started to take a crap on me, and it stopped working altogether. And I didn't have another way of recording for this show for a long time. So that fell by the wayside. But there's like probably 5 to 10 episodes of the Inequality Chronicles from 2014 that you'll find on YouTube that are still there. And that's in its original format. And then a couple years later, I decided to bring it back, but as a podcast. And that's, off and on what I've been doing for the past few years is doing a podcast of the Inequality Chronicles. But that also has evolved, because then I created another podcast. For some reason, I wanted to have like a billion-and-one podcast. I created another podcast that I called Building Unity. So the Inequality Chronicles was talking about the news of the day. Building Unity was about, offering my vision, a progressive vision for the future. So Building Unity, a lot of it was, like I said, just talking about this vision, including promoting a book that I wrote, a manifesto, if you will. I only got about halfway through talking about that book before, once again, I kind of ran into a wall on these plans, and I had to sort of scrap it. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to do what I wanted to do with that, but I decided to continue the promotion of the book and the Building Unity segments through the Inequality Chronicles. And while doing that, I got to about, I think it was episode 14 of the Inequality Chronicles through this new podcast format. And then I realized, I have all these podcasts. And I already merged the Building Unity and the Inequality Chronicles. Why not merge all of my podcasts into one? And, I also had a lot of overlap between podcasts too, because, I had my 2 political podcasts that I merged into one. I still at the time had a podcast with a good friend of mine named Gary Goldsmith he and I help him with the website, the Working Families First Ohio, .com. You should check it out, because a lot of good stuff on there. We have a blog on there, obviously podcasts. He's got his own podcast called The Blues Highway. And his own experience with podcasts with The Blues Highway led him to take what we were doing with Issues and Answers, where we would talk about issues, and then we would later talk about answers to those issues. He created a new one called Rock and Talk podcast, which is a lot of fun. He's only had a handful of episodes as of right now, and I really enjoyed all of them. I mean, they're a lot of fun. He has music in there, and then he talks about politics, analyzes it, and he keeps you interested and invested throughout the whole thing. I love Issues and Answers, but I think that this whole Rock and Talk podcast is a much better model. And I told him, maybe, merge the two from time to time. Sort of, because there's been 20 episodes of Issues and Answers. All of that involves him and I. They're all good listens, I believe, so you should take a listen to that. And if we do continue to do Issues and Answers, I consider it to be, sort of defunct, if you will. But if we continue to do Issues and Answers, I think that it will be awesome. But I also think it might be unnecessary, because there might be too much overlap. And I don't want him to overextend himself with all the podcasts, like I did. So the Omnicast is obviously, what does the word Omni mean? I believe it has Greek origins, and it's effectively all-encompassing. When you say someone is, say, omniscient, they are all-knowing. When you say that someone is omnipresent, they are everywhere. And so forth and so on. Like, omnipotent means all-powerful. So the Omnicast covers everything. And that's what I want to do. There's going to be segments here and there that are serious. There's going to be segments that are, really serious, that are not so serious, that are inappropriate, that are appropriate, all over the place. I'll have, because I also had like a sub-podcast that was a part of Appropriate and Decency that I called Family Time. It was just a segment of Appropriate and Decency where my kids and I, we would just have fun and just chat back and forth. And, of course, the 35th and final episode of Appropriate and Decency as a standalone podcast episode, it featured, like, the first segment of that is Family Time with my kids and I. And, I don't know, it's bittersweet to get rid of all these podcasts, but at the same time, it's going to be so calming. And from time to time, I'll be able to do like what I'm doing right now. I'll be able to talk about all these things. And the reason why I have this extended monologue, if you will, which that's going to happen a lot with these podcasts, because a lot of it is just me talking. So if you don't like to hear my voice, I guess this is not the podcast for you. Anyways, prepare yourself, because I plan on covering ground from wrestling, movies, Star Wars, sports, to comedy, politics, my books, everything. Everything that comes to mind that I want to talk about. And I'll have like little segments here and there. You might have 4 or 5 segments in a single podcast episode. And then podcast episodes may range from anywhere from, 8 minutes to 35 minutes. So these are going to be a lot of fun for me, hopefully a lot of fun for you. So with that, in this, the first episode of the Omnicast, I want to introduce you to an interview that I'm doing with my brother. Now, there's a lot of content I have with my brother. We're going to be doing a lot more recording here and there, so I can continue to include this. Also, another thing you can look forward to in the in this podcast is I'll be having interviews with close friends and who knows, maybe even local officials. I don't know. We'll see. Anyways, I'm really looking forward to this, and I did this awesome interview with Michael, and helping to promote his recent album that he released with a friend of his. It's sort of a rap album. It's got a little bit of everything for everyone, I believe. If you don't like hearing about people's feelings, you probably won't like it. But who listens to music without having an ear open for people's feelings? Because after all, that's what we're all into when we're listening to music. We are in the feels, if you will. So without any further delay, let me transition over here to my brother and my interview with him as we continue, or rather begin, to help prepare you and hopefully steer you towards listening to his music, starting with Pincushion, that he, Dead MC, that's his little name there, as well as his best friend, Scott Bragg, or Lil Xip, that they just released. Now, have a listen. Before you listen to this interview that I have with Michael, and it's a great interview at that, and then of course this interview is also infused with a lot of the music from, AntiSeptic Soul, as well as Lil Xip and Dead MC. Make sure you check out DanielCrawford.org and look at what the other Crawfords are up to. I have it linked right there on the main page. Do yourself a favor and check that out. But after you listen to this interview. But if anyone's listening, you hear that noise in the background. That's my washing machine. But
yep.
No. So, yeah. On that note, see, once you know that you're getting recorded, you get change of tone and everything.
Oh yeah.
Look, I gotta be all professional now. Although
I'm gonna hold her so she doesn't think I'm fucking freaking out because we talked fucking.
I'm not gonna lie, I would die laughing at we got a record of her barking in the background or something. I'm freaking out. What the fuck's going on?
Dude, we talked like we were across the stadium.
But that's why Mom said, hey, what's your name? That's what Mom would always be like. Why do you always guys always gotta shout? You're in the same fucking room. Because we would just do that, and it's because, as we talked about so many times, we always would interrupt each other. So our way of getting around that would be shouting over one another.
Oh yeah,
and we get excited and we just keep raising our voice.
Yeah, because we want to get our fucking point out.
Exactly. That's why I love whenever people see us in public and we start talking with each other in public, especially when all 4 of us are together.
Yeah.
It gets so fucking loud.
Nah, it's
I don't know, man, but
oh shit.
I don't know if we're the only family that does that, but I don't know.
Oh hell no. Yeah, I've seen other families do the exact same thing.
Right.
People fucking get loud as shit. I'm sitting there I feel like I'm right at home.
Right.
People screaming just to talk.
Right. And then we wonder why we have no voice at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Okay, so right down to business here. You and Scott just sitting down here getting into the business mode of recording now. Now you can go on the opposite side. I really did want to record this stuff on video at one point.
Oh yeah.
And I can do that in the near future.
Actually, I thought that's what we were doing when I came over here.
That I planned on it, but I was already using my camera for other purposes. So,
you're good. Oh, I got you.
Anyways, moving on. You and Scott released this. I guess you want to call it an album.
Yes, it is.
6 songs on it?
8.
8. Could have sworn there were just 6.
No.
Whatever. Moving past that. I have listened to it repeatedly since I got it. I just like listening to it because I always love supporting your stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just like, oh my God, you can think about it. It's been 10 years, actually 11 years, since your demo with AntiSeptic Soul had come out.
Yeah, it was about 11. About 11 and a half years ago, I think. Now.
So this is your first album since then.
Yeah, and that technically wasn't even an album. It was only a demo.
Is this a demo? I always called it an album.
Yeah.
It's a group of songs.
We had
it's only 5 songs.
5 songs.
Yeah, 5 songs on there. So, I plan on talking about each individual song.
You good girl.
Poor Missy, your girlfriend's dog here, is just she's like kind of freaking out. She doesn't know what the hell's going on.
She's good. You want to go see Mama? Yeah, but I'm
No, you're good, buddy. You're good.
Back in.
All right, I paused it for a second there. So this like I said, this is your first album. I'll just call it that. In 11 years, I have all of the songs from your demo, on my YouTube. I put them all together, and I actually recently created it as a playlist, and I linked it to my website.
That's man. All right. I love that album. Don't get me that demo, but I also hate it.
Well, what do you hate about it?
The only reason why I hate it is because the guy that did our stuff, he was an amazing guy. He did his job very well, but he had our drummer at the time, Draven, play on a different drum set than what we had been used to, and it made some of the sounds different. Because I think, if I remember correctly, he was actually on an electric drum set when he was recording, and we had a certain cymbal that helped me with my timing and everything, and it kept me in a certain flow.
Your tempo.
Well, yeah, but there's something with it.
Okay.
You can't really explain it because it's in the moment as you're jamming, just the certain sounds will radiate through you, and it brings out a different type of beast. I don't know. I was very, very physical with my with my music.
We're physical talkers too, so our whole family is.
When I would feel that energy, that's the reason why I like a lot of the beats that we record on, and they have certain basses and sounds in them that kind of get me into a certain groove, and it just that's the reason why my flows and voices and shit are different on different tracks, because I have that energy from the beat. Well, as I was saying, with the different cymbal sound that we had, because it was a China cymbal, we had a certain type of China cymbal. I can't remember, but I'm just gonna say rattlers. They had like these things on them.
Yeah.
And like when you hit it, it would make like a
sound,
like it would shake and like would rattle. But it sounded amazing, and it like just each hit. I remember. Like,
so you think
so
that
good.
if you had been able to record with Draven's original drum set, it would have been better?
I think it would have been way better if he didn't have us on like this the metronome. Like when he put us on that, it changed the tempo of some of the songs slightly.
Yeah, you told me before when it first came out. I'm sorry to interrupt you, buddy. You told me before it made the tempo faster.
No, slower. It made it slower.
Like, I just knew you said it like it altered the tempo and it completely threw you off.
It made it slower, and I had not been used to that type of tempo.
Yeah.
And everything, because I was like, whoa, man, this make me feel like I'm doing all this shit in slow motion, like for real. Like I remember we performed for him before we recorded.
Yeah.
And I remember he's like, we're only putting this on just to keep everybody in line, keep everybody in check. And I'm sitting there, I'm listening to after everybody else recorded because Draven and Vlad did theirs together, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And then Tony and Corey did theirs separately, and then I came in last to do the vocals. And as I was doing it, I just felt weird, threw me off, made my voice sound kind of weird to me.
Right.
When I re-heard it back, I was like, yeah, it's all right.
No,
but that's not like what it was.
Right.
Like,
see, the one song,
live.
I personally like all the songs on there, but the one song on the demo that you can tell you were thrown off a little bit on is Please Help Me.
Please Help. I love Please Help Me. Please Help Me was one of my favorite songs off of the demo.
Right.
Sadly, we did scrap that song after a while.
Right. You mean performing wise?
Yeah. We scrapped it.
So there you have it. This first part of many parts to come of this interview I have with Michael about not only Pincushion, and of course his group with Lil Xip, but also about his whole history in music. Of course, you've heard him talking about AntiSeptic Soul. This part of the interview continues next time around with more music from their demo to come. What you've heard so far was Banana Shit, as well as Please Help Me. We referenced Please Help Me specifically during this interview. We do talk about, I do show, or at least share, the rest of the music that he has made that's available online during these interviews. So, keep a close eye, keep listening. I thank you for your time, and we will catch you next time, hopefully sooner than later.